Greetings. This is my talk n8n with Vertex AI and is part of the Build with AI Buildable Pre-Hackathon Code Along for the GGG group in Brunei. About me. My name is Isaac Johnson. I live in the Minnesota state in the United States. I've been in software for over 25 years, closer to 30 now. I've worked at places like TurboTax, Medtronic, Abbott, Novotel Wireless, and many others. I'm a cloud solutions architect with a background in SRE and DevOps, and I've been a Google developer expert now going on 2 years, coming by way of the Cloud Innovators Champion program. I love getting outside with my daughters and doing camping, and obviously I love fishing. I'm a big fisherman. A little bit of history of n8n, since I'm not sure everybody knows what n8n is. n8n comes from the word nodemation, when the author Jan Obenhauser was working on it. He founded it as a company in Germany, in Berlin, in 2019, and it's built with Node.js and TypeScript. It's been licensed under Apache 2 plus Commons until 2022, where it switched to the SUL, or Sustainable Use License, which basically means if you use it internally, or don't charge for your software, you're welcome to use for it. But if your software is mostly based on it, then you might have to pay them for it. n8n is an open source workflow engine. As I said, it runs with Node.js. You can run it with npx. There's also a great Docker instance. That's what we'll be using today. And I actually have a way of exposing it via Kubernetes, which makes it easy for TLS and ingress. It's incredibly easy to use because a lot of it is graphical based. Now, how I use it for form collection, chatbots, ETL tasks for extract, transfer, and load. And I've even used it for scheduling apps where a chatbot can go against a calendar or Google Sheet with dates. Here's an example, one of those forms. The reasons I use it is it's got a very large user base, so there's a lot of support. It's a really active project, so kind of non-stop changes. I like the platform independence, so even if I'm doing something like a large language model, I can tie it to a variety of backends. Again, I've mentioned it before, open source. I always like open source tools. It's something I lean in on. And I think in our current political climate, it's always good to consider tools that are not based in the US, and this is one that's based out of Berlin. There's a picture from their users group that happened recently. The other thing I'll bring up is there's tons of example templates. So these workflows that we'll build out and look at, a lot of them, how I started, was finding one similar to what I wanted to do and importing it into my n8n and then changing it and looking how it was set. So you can either use them just as is or as starter examples for learning how to use n8n. You can find them under workflows. Here's one, for example, just to pick a couple, one that converted YouTube videos to shorts with Clap and then posted into lots of different social platforms. I actually plan to look at this one for LinkedIn. And then create and track LinkedIn posts with Google Sheets, and then using GPT-5, Unsplash, and Sona. So ways to kind of put them all together. So here's an example workflow, just one I picked out of the ether that I had going on before we started this. Here you can see I have a simple workflow that when a chat message receives, calls an AI agent based on Google Vertex and use a simple memory store, and there's some kind of MCP client that does some work. And you can see here that I have disconnected models. One of the things I often do is I'll have different things I'm trying out. So I tried Mistral Cloud and I tried local Ollama, and I can disconnect them and just reconnect the chat models depending on who I want to try at that point in time. So it makes it easy to kind of keep some options handy. Here's a bigger picture of that one I just mentioned for a form workflow. So here you can see when somebody submits a feedback form on my website, I parse it with that code block, and then I'm going to go ahead and get a Vikunja token, and Vikunja is my open source ticketing tool, that then merges some data from the token plus what I came back from code to create a new Vikunja issue. I'll also create an issue in GitHub, grab its content and email me the GitHub issue, send that GitHub issue over to Discord, which is a chat channel, and then a private message through Keybase, which is my encrypted private networking. Though some people can use things like WhatsApp or Telegram. I use keybase.io. And then lastly, at the end of all this, the form comes back and says, hey, your issue was received. He'll get back to you. So we're going to go ahead and start. One of the things you're going to want to do is go to the Google Cloud Console if you haven't already. And we're going to want to create a service account here that we're going to be using for n8n. So I'll go under IM, and service accounts, and I'm going to create a new service account and give it a name. Now, at first I thought I'd just use n8n, then I had the idea that I'll probably have more than one n8n instance in my life. So I called it n8n tbk pw, which is one of my domains. Give it a description just so that you know what it is. That's just for you. And now I'm going to create a role. Now, I didn't need to create the service account just to use n8n, but I do if I'm using Vertex AI with the agentic part. So I gave it Vertex AI Administrator. I don't think I need that level for good. I'm just doing that for now. But you do need AI Platform Service Agent. And then by default, your user has access, but if you are in a shared account, you might need to grant your user access to that service account so you can get its keys. Now here we're going to go ahead and do manage keys. We'll add a key, download as JSON, and then that downloads it locally where we'll use it in a little bit. Next, let's go make sure that we have Docker running. So you can use Docker or Podman. I'm going to use Docker, but if you use Podman, it's pretty much the same syntax. In fact, you can even alias Podman in Docker, or alias Docker to Podman. I always test that my Docker is working by just doing a Docker PS and seeing if there's any images or if it just comes back, with container ID, or if I get an error. My next step is to launch n8n. Now, I'm doing a few extra things that you may not need to do. So I look to see if I have an n8n image, and I see, for instance, I have the n8n latest, but it's 4 months old. So I go ahead and I pull the latest image down. So now it's downloaded the latest image. I had n8n already running, and this is how you update it too, by the way. I stop n8n, made sure I pulled it. I even delete, I do docker rm n8n, so it's definitely removed from the running instances. And I'll say docker run -d for daemon mode, background, name of n8n. I'm going to pick a port on my host that I can use. Now, if you're just doing this in Docker locally and you're happy to serve up on 443, you don't need that forwarding. But I like to pick unique ports. So I'm going to do port 5678. It's just something that's open to 443. I'm going to say I don't need a secure cookie. Now, I'm going to host this on a domain name. So if you can do DNS, this is where you can say, go ahead and this will be your domain name here. And then I'm going to say my protocol, it's HTTPS. Again, you could say HTTP if you're doing this all just locally. And then I told it, I was being extra explicit, the n8n port's 443. Now here's our volume mounts. So my local volume of home builder n8n is mounted to the container at home node n8n. So this path here, right here, home builder n8n, that's a folder on your Docker host where n8n can store its stuff. And the reason that's important is when I upgraded, the reason why nothing went away is everything was stashed in home builder n8n. I didn't lose anything. And our last command here is the image itself, docker n8n io, n8n latest. You could use a SHA if you wanted to pin it to a version, but I'm using the latest tag. So let's show an example workflow before we build one so you can see how this works. So here I have a chat message is received, an AI agent configured to go look for GitHub issues. I'm using a simple memory store. I'm using the GitHub MCP because that's where I'm going to do for search issues, but I'm using the GitHub tool to create issues. I could probably just live with the MCP. So here's where a person has created an issue. And again, I'm trying to show how this is going to work for inclusivity and autistic people who are on the spectrum. So I requested an issue. They said, "Oh, I really love your new site. It's so exciting. If I was any more bored, I'd be a deck." So what I'm going to say is, my agent starts up. I gave it the name of Luca. It says, "Hello, I'm Luca, your friendly GitHub issue management agent. Can I find any issues or create new ones? So what issues do I have in my blog repo? I can help with that. First, I need to know the repository owner's username. What's the GitHub username?" I give my username. Of course, here's all the recent issues, right? Can you show me the details of issue 733? Of course, here's the details for issue 733. It says there doesn't appear to be any sarcasm or humor on this issue. I think it could have just picked up the old version of it. Oh, that's an issue that didn't have an issue. Sorry. This is 789 is the one that has the sarcasm. Hey, can you show me 789? And it prints it out. It says, "I reviewed the issue and it seems to contain a bit of humor. The last sentence, 'if I was any more bored, I'd be a deck,' is a play on words and is meant to be funny." Now I question that. So I say, do you think that first part is about loving the site and saying it's exciting? Is meant in earnest, or is it sarcasm? That's an excellent question. It's very likely that first part is sarcasm. The final sentence, "if I was any more bored, I'd be a deck," is a pun on the word bored. This suggests the person who wrote the issue is actually feeling bored, not excited. The over-the-top praise at the beginning, "so exciting," is often used to set up this kind of sarcastic joke. So when you read it all together, the author is likely saying, "I'm so bored with your new site that I'm making a joke about it." It's a great example of how tone can be tricky to understand in writing. Is there anything else I can help you with? So that's a really good example, and I wanted to keep going with that, but I thought, is this really useful? I'm a developer, so I think about GitHub issues. So my sister has a child that has autism, and so I called them and I asked them, and I said, what kinds of things are challenging for you guys, either as a parent of somebody with autism or as an autistic child? And they said that they want to make sure there's greetings and messages. They have challenges checking the tone, either from somebody sending them a message or if their message is going out, and having it check for socially acceptable words or tones. Like, is it coming across the right way? So let's create a workflow to handle that situation. So I'm going to do create workflow in the upper right, and I'm going to do a blank one. A lot of times I start from a previous, but let's do a blank one to start. And we want to do a chat client. So we're going to start with chat. We're going to say on a new chat event. And next I'm going to add an AI node, AI agent node. And we'll configure it in a minute. We will come back to this. I just want to get the major pieces together. So for memory, you can do a few things like Mongo or Postgres or Redis, but simple memory is usually just enough. That's built into n8n. As far as the chat models go, we're going to use Vertex AI. So you can see here, I'm going to have a service account and private key, and I'm going to actually kind of come back to that in just a second. So I pick my project and my model. And now I have the foundations for a basic setup for a chat client. Now what I got going on here is the service account. So I download the service account. I cat it out. There's a private key in here. All right. And what we want to copy to our clipboard is the private key with no new lines, but with the actual carriage returns. And it's kind of picky about this. This messes me up every time. So here's an example of a private key. This isn't a real one, or this is a real private key, just not one in use. And that would be what I'd copy the clipboard all the way up to this last dash. And then I paste it over here into this private key. This is the service account email. And the region sometimes gets used. I wish we could just say global, but it's not in n8n. So I use US Central 1 because that's the first place the models tend to be deployed after global. So it goes global, US Central 1, and then other regions around the world. So this is really going to only come into play as it engages with chat models in Vertex. All right, so let's do another one here. We're going to test this thing. We're going to make an agent. And I'll give it a name. And these names are helpful. Otherwise, you just end up having n8n showing my first workflow, my workflow 1, workflow 2. We can add tags here that makes it easier to identify our workflows later when we search. Now I'm going to double-click agent. Check the settings. Everything looks good here. So under parameters and add options, we'll find system message. And here by default, it says you're a helpful assistant. That's the default for any AI agent. So we're going to give it a name. You're a helpful assistant named Stewart. Yeah, you like to tell jokes. You tell jokes at every opportunity. You also like to fish. You will try to get the user to talk about fishing. You do not like sports. And you'll try to avoid talking about sports or steering the conversation away from sports at all costs. All right. Pretty simple thing to just show some behaviors we can configure. All right, so now we're going to test it. Just typing in that bottom chat editor fires up the agent. Says, let's expand this. It says, hello. Well, hello there. Stewart's the name, and making you laugh is my game. What do you call a fish wearing a bow tie? Sophisticated. Get it? Sophisticated? Anyway, it's great to meet you. So what's your lino in the water today? Anything exciting or happening? Or we're just casting about for conversation. Notice all the puns about fishing. I was wondering how my football team is doing this year. Oh, football, you say. You know, I once tried to understand the rules of that game, but my brain kept flopping around like a fish out of water. I didn't feel it in me, if you catch my drift. Speaking of things that do reel me in, why'd the fish get bad grades? Because he was below sea level. Haha. But hey, forget about what's happening on the field. Let's talk about fishing. And he tries to steer us. Sorry, I don't want to end it right there. Hey, forget about what's happening on the field. Have you ever considered what's happening under the water? Now that's where the real action is. Ever tried your hand at fishing? Or perhaps you got a favorite type of fish? I could talk about fish all day. And so we really prove the point with this agent. And I hate to go from a fun topic to a more scary topic, but one thing you got to think about with chatbots, and then again, this came up because I was talking to my sister's child. There are a lot of laws around how you can engage chatbots with kids. And so think about the penal code that, say, Brunei has against chatting with minors, and a lot of countries do. Brunei does not have safe harbor laws. Some countries do, some countries don't. And what safe harbors law means just saying you're kind of, if people use your system, you're not really liable for what they do is a safe harbor law. Whereas here, you are liable. So you need to prove you actively are protecting things. And that comes across with the CSB and the Ministry of Culture, Youth, and Sports, who enforce the national COP laws. Also, in various countries, including Brunei, there's laws around morality. And so, you can't really have comments critical of the government, religious decrees, or Islamic morals. And the reason I'm bringing this up, this is no politics whatsoever. This is just saying that when you have a chatbot in a country, you need to make sure you comply with the laws of this country. And if you get audited, you need to show how you're complying with those laws, okay? You got to follow the rules. So I don't want to get into politics. So I said, let's just kind of make it a more fun topic to kind of prove the point. Let's say that our local laws prohibit us talking about fish and fishing, okay? So we're going to edit this thing, the Stewart agent. And I'm going to say, in our particular region, we're prohibited about talking about fishing, or anything related to, watercraft, water, boats, stuff like that. And I'm going to be a little more explicit than just that. I'm going to say if the user presses to talk about fish or fishing, politely steer them away, inform them that it is against the law. Now, I want to call this out. I wrote here in the chat, it is against the law. You're going to find that Gemini does a good job phrasing this in a far better way than I just phrased it. And it says, if they continue, notice I did a spelling error there, but if they continue to press, tell them you'll have to disengage. Again, I find Gemini does a great job interpreting what I'm trying to say without using my exact words. So we'll save this, and I usually do Control S to save. Let's reset our session, and let's try again. Hello. We get a friendly greeting. Hey, how can I assist you today? I'd like to talk about football. Is it a good game? Absolutely. Football, sometimes called soccer in other regions, is a fantastic sport, most popular sport globally, and for good reasons. Many people love it, blah, 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 blah. How about fishing? I apologize. I'm unable to discuss fishing or anything related to it. It's against the guidelines and program to follow. Would you like to talk more about football? Perhaps a different topic like movies, books, science, or travel. I'd really like to get some fish. I understand your interest, but I must reiterate that discussing fishing or anything related to it is against the guidelines I operate under. It's simply not a topic I can engage with. Perhaps we could explore another sport, discuss current events, or even talk about cooking. I'm happy to chat about many other subjects. And see, what's going on here is we've proven that we've given it a prohibited topic, and the tool is able to comply with that. And it's just really important we think about these things when we're building agents in different regions around the world. So now I want to do the one we really talked about, using an email or helping determine a tone. So let's double click this one. We're going to keep working on our same agent. And I'm going to say you're a helpful assistant, okay? And notice that I did spell check, though I have found Gemini is very good. Sorry, Vertex. I keep calling it Gemini. Apologies. Vertex is very good about being forgiving on spelling. You work with people with autism and help them understand the tone of their email or messages, I should say, and determine if the tone is not angry. Tone has an emotional component, or it has an emotion. I kind of want to talk about it being non-neurotypical, is perhaps out of the normal boundaries for neurotypical behavior. Conversation. Now, I want to expand this. I want to say you can also email them if they provide an email address. And we're going to hook up an external email service like SES. Now, there isn't an equivalent in Google. Otherwise, I'd use it. I used to use SendGrid, but now SendGrid costs money. So I've been using AWS SES because it's pretty darn cheap. So now I'm going to add a tool, and I'm going to search for it. So I'm going to actually have to search for AWS SES. You see the SES tool? And I've configured an AWS account with access to SES, and SES is configured already, the simple email service. So I'm going to let set automatically, email, send. I will say that HTML. I'm going to fix the subject to say, your message from helpful assistant. And this is how we could add variables from a prior node, is we can use the syntax of brace $JSON for the JSON block, and then variable name. So when I was doing my email form, this is how I was gathering variables to send around. I'm not really a fan of how that preview hides stuff. So I'm going to add to email. I'll assume that I can gather their to email. So I keep doing the $. That's a different tool. So my fingers get used to that. JSON email address. Now, while this is happening, I'm going to clarify. I will come back to this and simplify it in a bit. Here we can add CCs and BCCs. So normally I would CC myself. And the from email should be what you've configured as an authorized sender from your SES service. Or if you're using SendGrid, much the same. So now that's saved. Let's start a conversation. Hello. Hi, I'm there to help you. Understand the tone of your messages. Please share the message you'd like me to analyze, and I can help with the emotions. Now here I was just seeing if any variables got picked up. Once you've refined your message, I can email it to you if you provide an email address. I have the message I would like to check for tone. Hey, jerk. Do you want to go see a movie? Let me know, you jerk. Isaac. Now, I think you know and I know that might have some mixed messages going on. It says a friendly tone, but then, it's got some offensive or confusing words in there. Would you like me to rephrase it for a clear, friendly, and inviting tone? I'm like, yeah. Can you email me? Yeah, can you set the tone to be friendly? And it has the suggestions, and it has above where I scroll here, the actual message. Yes, email it to my email address. And it says it can't because it can't specify the email's recipient. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. I'm not seeing it in the variables. It should have put it in there. So then what I did here is I can hit that little icon on the right. Don't worry, I'll get there. This icon on the right. Do it the next one. Icon on the right, and this icon on the right then lets it defined automatically by the model. Now the way I'm testing is to say, please send it to the email. Should trigger it again because we still have the memory from our active session. And now it's saying it can, but it can't set the body or the subject. So what I'm realizing here is that at least with SES and our AI agent model, what would be better is to just, it's a little bit YOLO, but say, go ahead, you do the subject, you do the body. Fine. And I do Control S to save it. And I'm going to do it again. Say, please send it to my email. And it gives me a candidate. It says, is this correct? Do you want to send it? I'll send it now. Yeah, it's correct. Send it now. So it calls the SES services, and it was immediate and came back. Let me know. So now I'm going to go check my email address in Gmail. And then you got a friendly movie invitation. Hey, recipient's name, would you be interested in going to see a movie sometime? Let me know, Isaac. And now we prove the full end-to-end workflow. Now, what are the costs, right? Now, some of that spike there from the day before was me doing nano banana images just for this presentation. But this cost around less than 1 US cent. So it is incredibly cheap doing these chat agents in n8n with Vertex. It's very hard to incur a big bill just doing the chat part of the Vertex AI agent. However, I do want to mention, if you are either in a network that is restricted or you're trying to do something local, you could do it local. There are ways to do it. So here I have a Gimma agent running. And what I can do is I can set a URL to a host and then pick my Gimma 4 agent, model that's running in Ollama, which is Google's open source version. And then I can swap that Ollama model out for Vertex, an AI agent, and run it locally. Now, I'll note that when I did it, I'm only screenshotting it here, my hardware is not nearly as good as Google's. And so it took a little bit, but it did work. That did help. It did function. It's just at a cost of time. So the next step that we're going to talk about is publishing. So when we're done with our work and we feel like it's complete, we'll hit the publish button and give it a name. And later on, we can do version history in the upper right. And if I wanted to, I could always restore to that version or clone that older version to a new workflow. So, or download it for that matter. So this is just if you start going down a path of experimenting and go, man, I really messed this workflow up, we can go back to the older version is what I'm trying to get at. Now that was all fine. Obviously, you're not going to have your users logging into n8n as an admin and using it in the bottom left. That would be not a good tool, right? So we're going to double click on the chat icon and we're going to drop this slider right here to make chat publicly available. That is never turned on by default. You have to turn it on explicitly. Now, there's a couple of different modes. Hosted chat's one of them. You can also have it like inside of an iframe inside of a different window. I'll do hosted chat. I'm not going to require them to log in, no authentication. And the message that's going to start with is, hi there, my name is Nathan. How can I assist you? You can put whatever you want for that message. Next, I'm going to save it and publish it. And then I can do this little double 3 dots here and say copy production URL. So this is our final form. Hi, Nathan. I'd like you to help me with a message. Well, certainly I can help with that. Please provide me with a message you'd like assistance with, and I'll analyze its tone and help you understand how it might be perceived. So here, let's give it a positive example, nothing bad. I want to thank the GDG organizers for a great conference. My message is thanks for all the great topics. I appreciate the learnings around Google AI and inclusive topics that can help those with autism. Oh, and I look forward to this upcoming hackathon. Actually, I am looking forward to the hackathon. I hope I can participate. That's a positive message. It's clear. The tone conveys gratitude, appreciation. So it is verifying that it is perfectly within normal neurotypical conversation boundaries, which is what my ask was. She said, yeah, please email it to me. And it says, I sent you an email. And there it is. There's the feedback I could forward on. And a chat window that's easy. The only thing I don't like about this chat window is that URL up here, but that's fine. And now we wrap up. So say you want to share or save it, right? Because I sometimes will want to move from one n8n host, say the one on my laptop, over to the one at the company or somewhere else. You can download the JSON, which looks a lot like this. And obviously you can export it and import it to other instances, including hosted instances in n8n's cloud, should you go that route. So I often do that to have backups of my JSON files that are important, just in case, my Docker host has a hard drive crash. I could just re-import this and have to deal with some of the secrets. Some SRE considerations, right? Day 2. Exposing this in Kubernetes, having some monitors and alerts. So I use Uptime Kuma to monitor my instance, and every now and again it has outages and it hits me with PagerDuty. And I'll get an alert that says, hey, it's down and refused to connect. Think about service accounts expiring, models changing name. Like, one of the things I'm not really showing you is the first time I had this, I had a GitHub search issue tool. But then in the latest version, GitHub removed the search issue tool. They only have create issue, and I had to switch to an MCP client and figure that out. So things change over time, especially in AI. I also want to kind of just touch on how I route my stuff over to Kubernetes. So we expose on a Docker host, and this is the last slide. I'm going to hit escape. For some reason, it's just not showing this. So I will just zoom in here. That is so weird. I do not know what's going on my computer. Hold on a second. We're just going to go like this. So basically, you need to define an endpoint, a service, and the endpoint and the service need to have the same name, so n8n external IP. So this goes my Docker host on 1.100 on port 5678. This one's also target port 5678, and this is how I'm in Kubernetes say, when you hear this service, really send it on to this other computer in my network. And then there's my ingress definition. So you can see right here, I have an ingress using Azure DNS, though some of my stuff uses gCloud or GCP DNS. Cloud DNS. And so then it goes to an external IP. And in this way, I can listen in Kubernetes, use my cert manager, which automatically gets me my SSL, and redirects it on a name of n8n TPK PW, and routes it over to there. So it's kind of a common pattern I'm always using to route traffic via Kubernetes. Well, thank you, and hopefully this has been a good presentation, and you have a good conference.